Hello, folks, and welcome to another Co-working Values podcast. And before we get into the show today, I'm going to direct you to our amazing show notes. And in there, you'll find the word Unreasonable Connection. If you click that link, it will go through to Luma, and you can register for our monthly Unreasonable Connection event, which is simply lots of people who run co-working spaces, or community managers in co-working spaces, or community builders, or neighborhood workspace directors, whatever you self-identify as this week. And lots of people chatting together. Emily and I get you on there, say hello, talk about a topic for 3 minutes, and then you will get divided into rooms with each other. And it's a really great way of meeting other people that are on the same path and the same journey as you. So that's a link in the show notes. And of course, there's links to European Co-working Day and all the other fun stuff. But let's get into what we're recording today. So Emily, I know we've only just met. What are you known for? And what would you like to be known for?
Well, I think most people know me as your business partner, and I'd like to be more known as an adaptive workflow and accountability coach for neurodivergent business owners. That's really where my heart is these days.
Is that neurodivergent business owners like me?
Exactly. Well, Bernie, of course, you were the ground zero of this, my guinea pig that I've been practicing all of this on for the past couple of years. And of course, there's me too. I've worked really hard to come up with a way to consistently build that structure that I need, but that is also flexible enough to change with my needs and environment, which, most people out there may not need to do. It's not a mainstream thing.
I think as we get into this more, and particularly like both you and I know the Drive Network, when we go to those Drive Network calls, more and more people are realizing there's some kind of neurodivergence going on. And I want to point out that those people they're definitely not the kind of folks that would like jump on the bandwagon to start a conversation. But so many of those conversations, and a lot of those people in the Drive Network are freelancers and consultants and micro business owners. And as we're talking, it's like, yeah, I get that as well. I get really distracted by doing this, and I get really, I find myself, is it remunerating on this thing instead of getting down to here? And some people think they have a productivity issue, and actually they have a bit of neurodivergence going on. Is that what you think?
Yeah. Well, it's executive dysfunction. Is the right word for that, probably, that most people are familiar with. It's connected to conditions like ADHD and autism, depression, chronic illness, anxiety, trauma, but it can show up if they're under stress or in burnout. And that's that moment that you sit up and you're like, I want to do this and I know how to do it, so why can't I just do it? Executive dysfunction is what happens in that space between knowing what you need to do and doing it. And the work of managing it is not about forcing yourself through it, but learning to build systems and patterns and supports that make initiation of work feel possible again.
It all feels possible again for me. I was chatting, my friend here, Christina, who helps me with the Spanish. We're both neurodivergent, and we've both worked in restaurants, and we were saying how amazing it is to be a waiter or a bartender, and you can hold. I mean, I'm going to talk personally because I don't know what anyone else actually has going on in their brain, obviously, but I found like I could run between 5 and 10 tables at the same time, remember people's orders. There were all these little things going off at the same time, and it was the adrenaline rush of holding it all together was unbelievable. And then just how much stuff I could keep going at the same time. And I think, and we have spoken about this in the past, but not exactly this conversation. I think it was because there were so many tiny little things going on all the time. Whereas now, you said just now about initiating work. We've talked a lot today before we came on about how I've been timing every task to stay on track. And that is a result of that fascination with time tracking, which I've never had before, even though I've read lots about it. And years ago, Jessica Abel, who's also been on this podcast, recommended timing everything you do to get a grip on how long it takes you to do things. And then Sam, who is a neurodivergent artist and coach, said she has lots of clocks in her office or her artist studio because she just loses track of time. And listening to that kind of gave me permission to get a bit geeky about tracking time. And that has just took me like a month to actually get around to doing it. But now for a week, I've been tracking time in that app, and it is, I don't say this lightly, it's been like life-changing. Think about the amount of work we've got done today because I've been tracking my time.
Right. Well, and it's important to remember that time tracking looks different for different people. So, for example, for me, if I had even one clock where I could see the time, anything besides that little tiny display on the corner of my computer screen, my anxiety would be through the roof. I would not be able to handle it. So, but on the other hand, I have made a point of doing it in a slightly different way, where when I actually plan my work and I've got my checklist, I think this is going to take me about an hour, and I'll write it down. Or I think this will take me 30 minutes. The time estimation is a big part of Scrum too. And at the end of the workday, if I go back to my list and I'm checking off all the things I completed, and I can look at it and say, well, that task I thought was an hour, it actually only took me about 15 minutes. So right there, I can circle that and I can say, okay, where in my brain made me think that it would take that much longer? And a lot of the time it's because I was waiting for a piece that came right away. So it was external. It had nothing to do with me. Or it might be something like, I had an emotional block that kept me from moving forward. But once I got into my workflow, because I already had checked off a couple things before that, I was just like, just get through it. And I just got through it. So it helps you identify where your motivation has come from. And motivation is a big part of it too, because, when you're working, like you were talking about before, when you were bartending and everything, that urgency and the adrenaline, that only gets you so far, because it eventually leads to burnout. Eventually the adrenaline runs out, and eventually the motivation, when you get to that sort of the sagging middle of the task, when you have to kind of power through it, maybe at the end of the night when you're exhausted and you're closing down the bar and all that kind of stuff, you might have to really push your way through it, and your motivation, that adrenaline, is gone. What do you do?
We had loads of things to help us with our motivation. So as you're saying that, I'm thinking of think of people we work with who are community managers or running a space and everything. And one thing I don't miss about being a manager in a co-working space, which was a long time ago now, but I was always trying to write and do stuff. It was really hard work to send the email newsletter when we were at work hubs, even though we loved what was going in it and it was very simple to do and we were really good at it. But you had so many interruptions between someone coming in, Murad coming up going, there's no toilet paper in the toilet. Okay, we could do that. The locker's stuck, the dishwasher's this. Brad needs to plug a cable into this thing. Is it going to blow up the thing? I mean, that was a long time ago, but I would really struggle to get work done because I was interrupted. And now, like these days, I get up really early before anyone can interrupt me and get as much done as I can, because that's like premium productivity time. And then when we get to this time of day, doing podcasts is great, but if I tried to sit down and write an article now, it would be 4 times as long. And I knew that even before I started time tracking. So I think the question inside of that, Emily, is what can people who experience lots of interruptions but still have a lot of stuff to do?
Right. I would say, first off, examine your environment. Like when you were talking about work hubs and you have all these interruptions, there are only certain types of tasks that are suited to do in that environment. Newsletters is not one of them, because you have so many things in your existential overhead, all those things that you carry in your head without writing them down. you have all of these things that you have to connect together to get a newsletter out. You have to format it. You have to put the links in. You have to make sure that any sponsor information or client information is correct and the images and everything else. There's a huge checklist that goes along with the newsletter. That's something that's better suited to do like you are now, sitting in your office at home. Um, at work, however, when you're or at a co-working space, it would be maybe better to focus on things that require collaboration, or to put yourself into an artificial environment, for example, putting a giant pair of headphones on so that no matter what, you can't hear anybody that's trying to talk to you. It's similar to what I might do on an airplane, so that the noise isn't overwhelming and I don't get completely emotionally drained just by being there, existing in that environment. So just, quantifying your work, putting boundaries around it, and deciding which environment to do it in, for different types of tasks can be a big level up for that.
Can we jump? I don't know why this just popped in my head. Can we go back to that estimation thing? Because that was one of the most. We're certainly not saying everyone needs to be a Scrum expert here, but one of the things that really got me into the Scrum project process was, at the time I read the book, which was like 2014 when it came out, I had never occurred to me to go to that level of estimation about how long things would take. And I used this thing called, I think it was called like Burn Down Chart, which was a Trello plugin at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone who's making podcasts and email newsletters mainly on their own, it was a bit of an overkill, but getting a grip on how long things came. And then in the book, he says about, do you remember the bit about, and I'll put a link in the show notes to this book, how he says, estimating, is that a dog? Is it a chihuahua, like a small task, or is it a Great Dane? I thought that was quite funny too. But can you say a bit about the estimation time? Because that has been huge,
Well,
especially when we've done that together. Sorry to get excited again, but like when we've gone down the list and you've gone, how long do you think that will take? And I've gone, actually, that's only 7 minutes. But unconsciously in my mind, I'd set aside half a day for it.
yeah, there's two sides of it. There's estimating time, and then there's estimating effort. Because a task that could take 15 minutes may take a tremendous amount of effort. Therefore, you think it's going to take an hour. And the inverse might also be true, where you think that, there's only just a couple steps to this, but in fact, they're steps that require a lot of drafting, or, just research, things that don't have a specific end point. But so you might say, oh, this will only take me 15 minutes because it's not good. There's only a couple steps to it, but it's actually going to take you an hour. So it's important to do that from both sides. And you'll get a much better idea of how to then plan out your work. So for example, you don't want to do a bunch of tasks that have, like the last one I described, where the effort is very low, but the time is very high. If you link those end to end and you have issues with focus, you might really struggle that day and feel like you didn't accomplish anything, even though you did. So to kind of stagger them, and do the hard stuff in the beginning, and then add the stuff that takes less effort but more time at the end. That way, when you're done working, you can say, okay, I'm just going to give this a wrap. I'm going to tie it off and pick it up another day. And that's much simpler than doing it with a really difficult task where you're like, I'm already in the groove and I need to get this done. So you might let it drag on.
That all sounds very familiar. I think, shall we save people time in their newsletters by giving them that magic AI prompt?
Sure. Oh yeah, that was a fun
Yeah.
one. I was glad you
Yeah.
suggested that. That was fun.
Do you want to introduce it?
Sure. So a couple of weeks ago, Bernie introduced this. I can't remember where you said you found it, but anyone out there who already has, if you're using an AI and you've already got it trained to talk to you the way you want it to and answer you the way you want it to, this is a good question to put in as a prompt. It is, uh, based on what you know about me and knowing what's going on in the world, what would you focus on? And just see what it says. Just see what it churns up out of all of your prompt content you've done before. And it comes up with some really interesting answers.
It was great. I got that from I'm going to credit James Poulter, my mate who runs an AI based in London. I use ChatGTP a lot to help organize strategy and everything like that. And what it came back with was, I'm going to say astounding, and I don't use that word lightly. And then everyone I sent that prompt to said that was a real eye opener. I sent it to one person, and they said, because I knew they'd been struggling with how to position themselves, and they sent back and went, I just completely changed my LinkedIn profile, and I've got more clarity in after that prompt than months of mind mapping and whatever else you do. So it is, I don't want to big these things up too much, but if you've been using ChatGPT to help you work out your, particularly like your business direction, or how you're going to spend your time and what you're going to work on, this will help you, what's the word, cut through the noise, as they say. And what you could do is do that on yourself if you run a community or a co-working space. And then when you feel comfortable, and only if you feel comfortable, put it in your weekly newsletter that you send to the members, because then people will start chatting with each other. And maybe, and I don't know for sure, but I would, if I ran a space, I would put that in there and just see what everyone else came up with. And I would imagine it would prompt, I can't believe I said that, it would prompt a very purposeful conversation around the next lunch and learn you're doing.
Right.
Do you want to say anything more on that? Because it is really interesting.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that one of the things that I've done, I've had a pretty creative career as a writer and as a website developer. And one of the things that I've discovered, if you're lacking focus and you don't know what to work on, and you have a lot of different projects going, if you're someone like me and Bernie, who has a bunch of irons in the fire at all times, try changing format. And what I mean by that is, instead of writing on your keyboard, start voice dictating. Instead of drawing on your tablet, go to watercolors. If you're, and this is also, translatable if you're used to working at home remote, go to a co-working space, or vice versa. Try changing the format of your work, your setup, your context, and it can help reframe the things that you're working on. Sometimes it'll make things where you can see immediately, okay, this part of this helped this and this part didn't. And then you can apply it into your normal workflow and go back to your normal workflow with that new information. Habits are important, but sometimes some of your habits can be stagnant and can be dragging you down, and others aren't. So it's a good way to kind of determine what's working and what's not, is to shake it up a little bit, do it the same work, but in a different context.
That is definitely true for me. If I go, so I had to after we got back from February and London, as amazing as it was seeing loads of people and doing those workshops with Kofi and 360, I was zonked when I got back to London. So we got back here to Vigo in Spain, and
yeah, you were.
I kind of just had to rip the plaster off and do that kind of thing. And one of the things, there's a lovely coffee shop here called High Day, and it doesn't open till 10, which is not my ideal writing time. But then I started going down there at 10 o'clock, and I was shocked at how fast I wrote in there, because it was a change of environment. And this desk here, which I love to bits and one of my favorite workstations ever, had become the grinding it out, trying to get over myself zone. Whereas when I started going down the road, 7-minute walk, I got my mojo back, which was very Austin Powers of me. So anything else before we jet off?
I have a million different ideas. I could talk about this, but we don't want this to run all day.
I have too. I've got this little list, but we're going to have to come back again. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you go to the show notes, there's the link to Unreasonable Connection. There's a link to European Co-working Day. And at the time we're posting this, we're going for 100 co-working spaces in London. And as we're recording this, there's just 9 on the map already. All you need to do is register on the European Co-working Day website and say, I'm running a coffee morning, an open co-working thing, a little lunch. It's very, very easy. and then you can activate your space on the map before you actually decide what your event is, which a lot of people have started doing. And this is only do it if you have the time, space, mental energy, and you don't have an existential overhead about it. But the more spaces that are able to take part this year, the more we're able to spread the word, the movement, the value of co-working around Europe. So wherever you are in the world, be careful out there. It is a jungle. Say goodbye, Emily.
Goodbye, Emily. Bye.